We are starting broadcast.
You started the broadcast?
It's gonna take a couple minutes, remember? It took a couple minutes last time. Let me just adjust the light.
You just burped on camera. That was live now, you know that.
Yeah, let me actually do a burp. Never mind, there's someone coming in.
Yeah, no. Is that him?
My favorite gift of all time.
What is it?
Oh,
Garbage truck.
Mr. Alvine, how are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
You're coming. Wonderful.
So it's just literally. Beats the whole.
Are we on, Ben?
Let me check on my phone.
I'll check on my phone because we're going live. You're going to be famous now.
You might not yet. Sorry, I got a really funny snap. Anyway, are you guys are you subscribed to us on YouTube?
See.
Can you see anything yet? No. No. Hey Rod, did you what's that meant? Yeah, I think it's still
on YouTube, yes.
Puerto Bello.
That's something I completely.
it's not up yet, A-Rod. Just give it a couple minutes though.
We'll be able to. I will send you the link.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, it keeps it archives it for us.
We ready?
Oh, yep, here, we're live. We have 2 watching right now.
Well, we got him right there.
All right. So, Ben?
Yeah, it keeps it archives. I'm sorry. Do you mind if we get a little shout out on the camera?
Any way you want.
Perfect. You want to just stand right there, please, sir?
Stand down there.
And just, talk about what you're excited for with the event.
All right.
Let me introduce Bob. This is Mr. Derek Howell.
How are you?
Bob Alvine is
Good
the
to see
sponsor of the lecture today.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Welcome.
and let me move you over here because the camera is.
Oh, okay.
That's
we
all
have,
good. We're live
Mr.
now.
Bob Alvine,
Oh.
Derek. So we're gonna ask Mr. Alvine to say a few words for on behalf of it's the first time we do this, so we're excited and the camera's right here, that itty bitty little thing. If you could say hello to the folks and thank you for helping the Department of Economics and the College of Business.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure you're here to.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
And here, Ben.
Sorry.
Derek Howell, our speaker today.
Say hi, Derek.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important for students to be able to get experience from experience.
And this is an expert, yes.
And I basically thought of this and started it when I actually started and was responsible for the Commission on the Future at the University of New Haven back in 1999. And then when I became chair of the board, I said it's got to be implemented. So I started it in the business school and I put up the funds to get it going. And then from there, we did the same thing over in engineering, the same thing now in life sciences and in arts and sciences, and also in forensic science and fire science. So we've got 4 or 5 of them going now, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, Mike was telling me a little bit about the program and that students are have to make 27 days while they're on campus during their career here.
The PEP credits, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's for all college business. It's, incentivizing for them to come to things like this because some
I
don't want to come to all.
Well, and it's nice because it'll get them involved in something a little bit different. And
Yeah.
I mean, if there was no incentive, maybe they do it.
You still get some, but it's the idea is to bring out community and all.
It's great.
Perfect.
All right, so
The sound check is good.
sound check is good. We're transmitting excellent.
Now, Bob, did you come from private industry to sponsor these, or you're chairman of the board for the university?
My lifetime has been private industry, but my heavy lifetime other alternative has been nonprofits. And of course, I've spent an enormous amount of time at the University of New Haven, starting in 1990. 6 or 7 when I started the Henry Institute of Forensic Science.
Oh, okay.
And then became on the board, and then I proceeded from there to be asked to chair this special commission we had, and then became chair, and then a number of things happened after that. So, yes, I brought a lot of private experience, but a lot of love and care to the university. My son came here for his master's degree, and my daughter, in her undergraduate, was an honored graduate physics.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I represent a nonprofit
Power
called
Options.
Power Options, and we're a member-based organization in Massachusetts
Okay.
that has 500 members. We brought them together to purchase power in the third-party market. In Massachusetts, we have everybody from Tufts to Little Sisters of the Poor.
Sure.
They really don't exist. Let's see, Insight Meditation Center to MIT to Bay State Medical. Just everybody that you can think of in Massachusetts has been a member one time. So,
And with the greatest emphasis on what?
helping nonprofits save money in the energy market. So whether it's power, natural gas, or solar. And in Connecticut, we just started bringing down a power program. And that's kind of how I got hired. And I think how I ran into Gabrielle was at Middlesex Chamber.
One of my
Can I have a
colleagues.
sign sheet right now?
But the cost of energy in Connecticut is pretty vital.
Yeah, right.
It's one of the higher cost states.
Oh, yeah. Typically, yeah, it's either first or second. And sometimes
That's right.
we fight it out for a while.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't have any energy sources here outside of what we have for electricity. And so we are very, I think many companies that are here, of course, I ran many companies, very large ones, like United corporations or big ones. And the whole bottom line of it is you have to have elements that make the industry work, and one of them is, low cost energy.
And that's what, we feel that when we save a nonprofit dollar, that's one more dollar for others. Another
Very
class.
significant. Anything that can be done, particularly now in the university world, the college world, where costs are becoming more focused on because of the fact that education is becoming more costly. And students have to be able to afford it. It's difficult. So
Could I interrupt you? I want to introduce my colleague, Patrick Gurley. He just joined you this semester. He's our expert on energy, environmental, and all kinds of nature. So he's
and I met Matt before.
Yeah.
And that little description you gave of the business model, take a little time and explain it because it's worth knowing. It's pretty unique. So,
Okay.
at the beginning or wherever at some point. I mean, it's your show. So.
Oh, yeah, I have about 2 or 3 slides of introduction that I didn't. Just talk.
Okay, good.
Interesting to know what these things know about power.
Presentation wise, quicker. So,
okay, great.
we have a
Let me one
clicker,
more.
so, if you want to list, you can do that.
Okay.
One more. One of my colleagues, Professor Claude Chiron,
Hey,
Very
Howell?
nice.
Derek Howell,
Derek Howell.
and Mr. Bob.
Good to see you. And how long have you been here at Kansas?
2010.
Sorry.
2010.
2010. Very good.
She's an expert on international business and sustainability and all kinds of things.
All right.
International.
I did my dissertation on biofuel.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
So
Excellent.
you're not going to be talking about that, right?
Only marginally.
Only marginally.
Yeah, but it all fits together. I mean, if I had substituted biofuel for solar, the same thing. Good, good. Yeah, ask questions, please.
Well, I think there's such an emphasis on this, and we're trying to
Yeah.
One of the things we have to do is not doing it, is destroying all the other energy. You have to be able to allow all the energy to function for what it's valuable to, and bring it all about.
Yeah, you don't want things to drop off the cliff and then the transition.
Exactly. And that's where
I wish the wire. I'll get it next year. And we pivoted.
We have to turn the.
No, once
Same
there's a
thing is
year,
happening
right?
in the automobile market.
Turn the.
Yeah, no, I
Think
no,
about that.
I had a better
I don't know them back.
earlier, but
Well, that means the fact that the overhead cam engine is driven over.
That's true. I mean, if somebody like Porsche is starting to get the
Yeah, and all of the companies are dropping it in at a point because the fact is they're still doing it by hand. So as long as they have a case of that, it's got to go along with it. So
thank you.
Oh, I thought you were.
you know, sustainability. Government subsidies.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the problem with subsidies is when you, and nobody wants to pay.
It's the same thing with solar. You know, how much would solar energy make it without tax reductions and so forth? At the beginning, you have to do that. You have to gear if you're doing that stuff.
Right, and the other thing is, you make this.
You'll see this on a little louder too.
You get this huge rush. It meets the demand. You start taking the subsidies away, and the market disappears, and all these, all these, people good as well, construction companies, so the market just totally disappears, and then they're left home back.
Sure.
And that we've already done that a couple of times.
Oh, that's
And,
true.
yeah, the solar's gonna come and.
They still have the companies associated with it.
Yeah.
Now, that's why it has to be something that recognize the longer term need. Bring it out, broaden it out so that it doesn't need tax reductions and solar energy to make it work. It competes. And when it competes, then it's really sustainable. Good. How long have you been at this?
35 years. I've worked in Northeast Utilities for 25 years. First as a load forecaster, which is forecast segment demand, so residential demand. I would look at that with the econometric models and models that looked at it from, number of households, what's in a household, how efficient is it, and then what is the trends in these things. And then after that, I moved on to Select Energy, which was their unregulated subsidiary. And that was startup mode, which is a lot of fun. And I did everything. I did market research, human resources, eventually becoming the manager of pricing. And then Direct Energy hired me, and I was director of pricing for the Northeast. And after that, I became a consultant.
I'm using direct energy.
Are you? Yeah. Yes. And they're a good company, and they have some integrity though. Companies out there don't. There's better gas market companies that don't have that.
I agree. Many of them were just competitors.
Oh yeah. And I got a phone call the other night from someone who said, "No, we want you to take advantage of the discount on your electricity discount." And I know, having been watching, that's not, and you would never call you, they can't call.
Very good. Do you have a fast synopsis of who you think it's all that?
I do. I'd love to come back and talk to you. That's, as Power Options, that's my other role, is really to get members to sort and the way I like to go to talk to people, so I can talk about the market, talk about Power Options, and talk about when it's good for them to make a choice. It's not always good.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes the government price, the NU price is a good price, and sometimes it's better to be in the market.
And it's also for nonprofits, they can't be in an experimental stage. They don't have the resources to just experiment. They have to have something that's proven.
There is something that I think would be of interest to the university that might be an experiment.
Okay.
But also, I think if it is properly supervised, a great opportunity for the university. So, we have a spot. I think that's a great way. They give opportunity to teach students about how the spot market. And then with your operations people, help them make decisions about, or at least provide the research, the decisions whether to purchase strips, fix the whole thing, or just leave it in the open. There's something to talk about.
I'm involved in a couple of different venture semi-private equity companies that are in the area of energy. One of them is Bloom Energy, Bloom, which
Oh,
has,
the box? Okay.
which is a totally
Fuel cell, low fuel
a
cell.
different form of fuel cell.
Okay.
So, it's moving forward, so that should make it, at this point, a box that's about 3 times the size of this, small, is providing all the power for AT&T's headquarters, Google's headquarters, Facebook's headquarters. And this whole concept is expanding, just putting the first one up here at the mall in Maryland to power home. So I think there's something in there in terms of. I do. Find it, but
It's in Mommy's pocket, right?
I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, that's fine. And,
Great. Yes.
when you're ready, we can talk. Thank you.
It should, if you send you the link, you just have to. It should.
Okay.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. We're all excited to have Mr. Howell here. But first, I just have a few quick announcements to say. This is our first time recording live on our YouTube channel and the UNH Economic channel. And it's going to be posted on Facebook after, so you can rewatch it if you want. First, I want to say thanks to some of the professors who came through here. I want to say thanks to Bob Alvine for coming.
Thank you.
And I'll make this pretty short because Mr. Howell has plenty to say. But just as a quick background, I'll just read off a little bit. Mr. Derek Howell has about 30 years of experience in the energy industry. This includes 11 years of experience in deregulated energy business. He has worked within energy marketing firms to develop lines of energy products that meet the needs of businesses, governments, and nonprofit customers. Before he founded Howell Energy Consulting in 2008, Mr. Howell worked with Direct Energy, and he helped them develop their New England and New York electric pricing department. Before even this, Mr. Howell was the manager of electric and natural gas pricing for Select Energy, where he managed and negotiated large retail deals and created products. So without further ado, Mr. Howell.
Thanks for the nice introduction, Mike. And Armando, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited to do this. And Bob, it's been nice talking to you already. The rest of you folks, I hope this will be a great conversation. Now, one of the things that's funny is that you guys gave me 2 hours. I'm in business, and when you get more than 20 minutes to talk, you're just waiting for people just to get ready to toss you out in their office or something. But so this is quite a long period of time to fill up. We'll see if I can do it. But I think the only way that'll happen is with your help. If you have questions, and as there are things that I roll over because they are common to me but not common to you, please ask that question.
Derek, pardon me.
There we go.
We have 2 hours. Obviously, it's your talk. You can go as long as you want. An hour, 45 minutes. It's up to you.
I would imagine that people are crossing their fingers that it's not 2 hours. So a little bit about my background. I am both a graduate, I have master's degrees in economics from both West Virginia University and from the University of Connecticut. And from that, I got, after leaving West Virginia, I got a job at Northeast Utilities, now Eversource, as a economic load forecaster. And in that job, we had to produce market models for different sectors, like residential, commercial, industrial. And we did that 2 ways. We had econometric models for short-term forecasting, predicting the next 2 or 3 years of consumption. And those models were based on a function of price, population, and income. They were pretty simple models. And then again, we didn't have a whole lot of data to work with at that time. It was sort of a new development for NU. So the data was a little ragged at times. So the thing about that was that my whole life has been sort of devoted to price. But just before we get there, recently, my last 8 years, I've been a energy market consultant, and I've done everything from developed a program for a supplier to help them network with small industry associations. Let's see, I completed a supplier's application for so that they could participate in the Connecticut market. Then I write newsletters, and then most recently I've been working with a group called Power Options. And Power Options is a nonprofit that works with other nonprofits to help them purchase power in a third-party market. Massachusetts, they are a 500-member consortium that has come together to issue a contract under which they could participate in power, natural gas, and solar markets. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, which is incentives. That's it. Thank you. Okay. So like I said, my whole working life has been devoted to price. Either trying to estimate what the impact of the price of electricity is on residential consumption, looking at it in terms of making prices to offer products in the market, or offering prices to consumers and trying to understand consumer behavior relative to those prices. So while I was well aware that prices were integral to what we were doing at NU in terms of residential consumption, I was struck by what happens when incentives are placed in the market. After we had a program for our sales department. But before we go there, when we talk about incentives, when I think about incentives, I think about two things. They're not a market-based price. They're a temporary administrative price. So they're not something you put in there in the market forever. They're something you put in for a short period of time to drive some behavior. So there we go. So during the mid-1990s, NU began to think about, in the mid-80s, NU began to think about how to get Millstone 3 built and completed. The trade-off was that they started doing conservation load management programs. These programs weren't always successful. They had a hard time getting the engineering staff to go out and actually implement these programs. I worked with the head of the Conservation Load Management Department, and we created a small sales incentive. Reach a certain threshold of projects, and you would get a bonus in your pay. And these were not large bonuses. These were hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. So but the point was that here was an organization, if you know anything about utilities, they're basically, they're not like private firms where there's a lot of big bonuses or anything like that. There's rarely bonuses. They get small cost of living type increases. That was typical of the utility. So give people an opportunity. And did they take it? Oh my God. They ran with this thing to the point where here was a program that would never meet its goal in a year for lighting savings. They met it in the first quarter that year. So that's how powerful incentives are. So, but recently we've had another, incentives have hit the news in a strong way when we talked about, when you saw the news about Wells Fargo. Recently, Wells Fargo fired 5,300 employees for falsely creating accounts, credit card accounts for their customers. And the reason was that they were given some incentives, and and these incentives were enough for them to try to game the system. And as we see, there was a story written in Reuters where Matthew Levine made some great points. So two basic principles of management, regulation, and life are get what you measure, and the thing that you measure will get gained. So yeah, Wells Fargo wanted to move people from using 6 financial products, you think checking, savings, credit card, mortgage, and a couple others, to 8. So that was the push from the management. The result was that people were the frontline staff was having a hard time doing this, and so they gamed the system. But the reason they gamed it was not because the financial incentives were so great, but more because the incentive was don't lose your job. So the sales quotas were very difficult for people. Solar market. We're going to flip to the solar market. And in the energy market, there are incentives all over the place, from drilling to production to sales. Everywhere you look, there's incentives. But we're going to focus on a set of incentives for the solar market. And the solar market if you looked across the states, there's a database called DSIRE, which is it's run by the North Carolina state, and it's a database of state incentives for renewables and efficiency. It's a great database for someone like me. It's very handy. But when you look at solar incentives across different states, California, Nevada, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, it's a hodgepodge of incentives. There's nothing consistent about the way this is done. It's done state by state, and states have their own goals that they're trying to reach, policy goals. So what I'd like you to do, let's see, get this. And one more right there. Okay, is grab a piece of paper, and what I'd like you to think about is what the benefit of solar is, and then think a little bit about what's the cost of solar. You can do this in your head if you like. It's not everybody has anybody hand anything in. There's no wrong or right answers. And what I want you to think then, after you've kind of thought about the first two items, rate the overall net benefit as bad 1 to 3 or good 7 to 10. Limiting 4 to 6 because now I want you to pick a side. All right. And then defend your overall score, kind of summarize that a little bit. Okay, let's take a couple of seconds to do that. Everybody all set? See a gentleman next to it. Okay, so benefit of solar. Anybody want to shout out a couple of answers?
Tax breaks.
Okay.
Renewable resource.
Okay.
Clean.
Clean. And these are all things that you can optimize, right? So you could, as a business, you could optimize the tax breaks. If you're a government, you could optimize renewables or the clean aspect of energy. But those are policy decisions. And when you make that decision, you're going to build your policy around that. So what about the cost of solar? Anybody have anything in mind?
Disposal
Disposal?
of old panels.
Sorry?
The equipment.
The equipment?
The loss of a massive amount of jobs in energy.
Okay. So, all right. I'm just going to have you think about this a little bit more as we go through this presentation. I'm not going to give you enough information that you're going to come and say, it was one way or the other. But I'm going to give you something to think about, and that if we investigated further, that these are maybe some of the aspects we would look at in determining not only just solar policy, but any other policy. because there's never just one result. Right? There's impacts throughout the system. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about some of those incentives, and there's a mention on the DSIRE database, getting great database. You know, if you were in the solar industry, you'd have to hire 3 or 4 people just to track just the different incentives and laws regarding solar across the nation. In Connecticut and Massachusetts, we have a great contrast in how solar is supported. So it's not too unusual for that there's some sort of property tax exemption. You see that in a lot of states. Connecticut's unusual, and they have this PACE financing, and that allows you to finance a project of renewables, conservation load management through through your property tax bill. So you go ahead and you implement the measure, and then you pay it back through your property tax. The great thing about that, it's a very nice program actually, which allows the transfer of these projects when there's a new owner. So they just pick it up in the taxes. And then there's more financing through the Connecticut Clean Energy Fund, green power purchasing. State facilities were ordered to buy 15% of Class 1 renewables, and Class 1 renewables include everything from your fuel cells to solar, wind, and biogas. Also, there's a few others as well. And then there's the other remaining renewables are things like hydro, biomass, combined heat and power systems, conservation load management measures, that type of thing. So, but the state is asking people to buy 15% of Class 1, and that's 2.5% higher than what the general public is buying when they buy electricity in the state. They also hold a ZREC auction. So if you have a project that's been approved, it's ready to go, you put it into this auction, and you offer it, what price would you take, would you get a ZREC? So it's sort of a declining block. So if you were putting it, or I should say just the opposite, it rises up to the point where the state gets the goal that they're trying to reach. So I think it was 2015, the price dropped from $120 to $50 for the ZREC. So it's coming down really fast, what people really need to put in solar. Massachusetts.
Can you explain exactly how the ZREC auction works?
I probably can't explain exactly how it works.
Just a little
okay, but
more for.
So I had a project. If I have a project and I think it needs a subsidy of $100 a megawatt, I would put it into the ZREX queue. If the state has enough projects to meet its goal someplace prior to that $100, I would get it. I would get it. Okay.
So you have the incentive to ask for as little money as possible.
That's right.
You get hit first.
Yeah, you want to try and get your project in, but you'd love to know about where they're going to clear.
Are those auctions blind? Do people know how much other people are bidding?
They're blind, yeah. You have to submit it. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so Massachusetts, here's a different set of incentives. They have an excise tax exemption. And then they have it, which is essentially a sales tax exemption. They also have excise tax deductions, and the installation costs can be deducted from the net income calculated for tax purposes, for excise tax purposes. They have these solar renewable energy certificates. They're called SREC 2. It's going from 2016 to 2024. Qualified units receive between 375 to 275 a megawatt hour. The market price in the wholesale power market is about $42. Forward prices. So It's a huge markup. And in fact, let's see, what is that? It's like something like 6.5 to 9 times more than the market. So it's a huge incentive. So you can see already between Connecticut and Massachusetts, I think you have an idea of what the outcomes might be. Let's look at, so again, I think we already kind of went over this, but we have property tax and financing. In Massachusetts, there are tax exemptions and this huge, very generous SREC program. So Massachusetts, again, when you have overly generous incentives, it's going to be the same thing that happened in the Northeast Utility Sales Program. You're going to go right through your goal in no time at all. And in 2015, they were nearly at their 2018 goal. So in Connecticut, the auctions are kind of tapering off. So there's sort of that transition as these solar panels come down in price. The incentive that you need is less. People are bidding in smaller numbers, and you see that kind of tapering off. So it's two very different programs. I have a friend who works in Western Massachusetts Electric, and he was in charge of some special programs up there. Got shanghaied just to do interconnection work for solar panels. So they just took him off his job, and now he's doing that full time. So effectiveness, surprise, right? In Massachusetts, they have 947 megawatts of solar, and in Connecticut we have 188.1. We're second largest, and then I think Vermont follows that. So Massachusetts accounts for 72% of all of New England solar. Massachusetts, that's a big state, but should it be 72%? Yeah.
Do you know how the cost per megawatt hour from the state is, how it compares across?
Basically the same. ISO New England is a hub, and they determine the day ahead prices and the market prices.
No, I'm saying how much did Massachusetts wind up paying out?
Oh, how much it
per
total
megawatt
costs?
hour versus how much did Connecticut? Because Massachusetts definitely paid out a lot more per hour.
Yeah, well, I think if you took that 275 times the 947, you kind of get somewhere in the ballpark.
Yeah, versus
It's
Connecticut, you said the Z-REC was down to $50.
Yeah, but going back in time, it was higher. But yeah, I don't have the exact costs. So it's pretty mixed. I was talking to somebody in a business meeting the other day, and they said, "Why is it when I go out to Western Mass, I just see fields of solar panels?" I said, "This is the reason. It's those SRECs." And then when we look at Massachusetts, compared to other states, the top 10, these are the top 10 states for solar. Now the number's a little bit different. It's 1020, but there's probably some difference in how people are counting things. But long story short, you can see that California is just way ahead of everyone else. They have huge incentives and huge push to get renewables in their market. And you see that 2 states that you really wouldn't expect to be there are there, right? You see New Jersey, number 4, right? And then you see Massachusetts at number 6. So that's the power of incentives. New Jersey also had some very rich incentives, which have pretty much since gone away, but for a while they were going great guns. So yeah, this is just kind of bizarre results. There's states in here that you don't see that you would expect. Florida, where are they? So, and then just the renewables in general, huge difference in our own market. So if you looked at any given day at the generation by fuel type in New England, you see something like this. And you see like the blue, it's I don't know how well it's showing, but that's 57% gas. That's a whole nother issue. The reddish is the nuclear plants. That's about 27%. And then you see renewables are next at 6%, and that's higher than oil and what we got? Oil and coal, I think, on any specific day. So that's a huge change in the way we produce energy in New England. If you go back 20 years, it was probably 57% nuclear, probably 27% oil, and the rest was probably made of natural gas. So, did the incentives work? Heck, yeah. Yeah. So we got what we paid for. But then we also incurred a whole lot of change on our distribution system. So you'll hear from time to time somebody from Eversource or Avangrid talk about what's happening in the distribution system. Now, those people who develop policy have determined that these things are not going to be, should not get in the way of the implementation of solar. But, and again, I'm not going to give you all the costs because I don't have them. But these are things to consider, not only here, but when we have other policies as well. So if we were to do a policy class, we would be looking at not only what is the change, but how does that change kind of flow through the rest of the market. So the distribution system, changes are occurring. We have cost shifting from one class to another. We have cost shifting within a class. We have changes in peak demand, not all bad, but there are changes that are causing other problems in the market. Not only that, peak demand is shifting to a later hour. If you have solar during the day and then not at night, as the solar tends to tail off towards the end of the day, then the rest of the generation has to come back on. And so you start getting pushed to later hours for solar. And then the last one is intermittency. So a solar panel doesn't work at 100% all the time, right? Day like today, part of the day you get some solar, part of the day you don't. So that causes other issues just in terms of management of the grid. So shifting costs. To set rates, utilities perform cost of service studies. A cost of service study is it's pretty straightforward in that you're just adding up all the costs of doing that distribution system, whether it's the power, how much did it cost you to maintain the power lines, telephone, utility poles, how much did it cost you for labor, how much did it cost you for transformers. You add up all those costs, right? It's very straightforward, but it's excruciating detail. It's unbelievable. And then you have to say, well, who's going to pay for it and how much? So that's the more difficult task. And typically rate cases are, there's a lot of testimony about how you're going to allocate the costs. And so the way it gets allocated is depending upon how many kilowatt hours flow through the meter. That's one thing, right? And then the other part of that is peak demand. And just to, so you understand, the utilities and ISO New England are tasked with keeping a reliable system. So they have to meet the consumption every hour of the year and at the highest point. So that's the peak. So how much do customers contribute to the peak? So costs are shifted from customers with behind the meter generation to those without. Okay, some of that makes sense, right? I use less of my meter, I shouldn't be paying as much. But am I getting the same value out of the distribution system? Utilities would tell you something kind of that mixed story of, yeah, there's value in the fact that people are using less, but we still have to maintain the same level of service to that house should their system go down, because we're required to keep a reliable system. So that's an issue for them. And then from within a class that have solar to those that don't, to another class that doesn't. So if residential is the prime target for solar, there's plenty of commercial plants out there. There's a lot of residential. So you see that's shifting from one class to another, because one class is now contributing less to the peak than the other class. So utilities have started trying to implement non-bypassable charges. Eversource did this in their last rate case, where they took their customer service charge and said, well, you know what? We still need to maintain this distribution system. We need to collect money from those people who are on the distribution system but are using less. So it becomes more of a fixed cost. So I guess the example, another example to point at that's kind of similar is electric cars. If we're maintaining the road system, the interstate highway infrastructure through the gas tax, and you're not using any gas, but you are using the roads, you become basically excuse the pun, a free rider, which just means that you're able to escape paying for the resource. So, and that's, you know, and as an economist, that's the ultimate pariah. You're a free rider. You may be happy, but no one else will be. So likewise, if you put on the distribution system, solar system, the utility collects costs on a kilowatt hour flow, for the most part. I mean, if you look at your utility bill, most of the costs are per kilowatt hour. You don't consume through the meter, then you're avoiding those costs. So now we also have lower peak demand. So that's not a bad thing. That means that we have to build less generation units. That's a good thing for New England. But we can see we went from somewhere in the order of, I think it was 2006, where we had like 28,000 megawatts. We were headed towards 30, we just thought fairly soon right after that. But between the conservation load management and renewables, we're now down to 25,000. The last peak was in August. It was about 25,560, and it occurred on a Friday at 4 o'clock. And that's really unusual, because Friday, what happens on Friday typically when you're looking at how people use energy is, especially businesses, manufacturers, and commercial buildings tend to be shutting down earlier on Friday as people are leaving. And that would mean that the peak time, which used to be always at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, would be lower on Friday than typically on other days. When, in fact, what's happening now is that peak is shifting to later in the day, because now we're representing the solar's knocking down the peak during the day, and as that solar starts coming off, the generation starts popping up. So the peak gets to be later. So I guess I kind of get ahead of myself a little bit here. So in California, though, this has become such a problem that it's actually torpedoed the economics of a lot of solar, people who have purchased solar. So if you depended on how you were going to afford your solar system by using the rate system that was in California, which they had time of day rates, they had a price during the peak hours, and they had a price during the off-peak. So you think of off-peak as probably 4 to 8 o'clock, on peak as something in the order of 8 to 4. Right? So what's happened is that solar is now pushing that peak later, and what's happened is the new rates that come out keep pushing the on-peak period later. So the time that you're getting for cheaper rates at night is disappearing. And so your economics are going underwater.
Does California has daily peak pricing and non-peak pricing?
Yeah, on and off peak, yeah. We used to have it in Connecticut for residential, but that all disappeared. Too hard to administer. So the other thing that's happening with the change in peak hour is that we have a change in how the ISO New England operates. ISO New England has to predict how much capacity, which is how much generation they're going to need to meet the peak demand 3 years in advance. They hold an auction every February to do that. And they base that on their load forecasts. And load forecasts look at the past to predict the future. Now, they do understand that there's solar being put in the market, but they don't know how much. And especially what they don't know are those things that are just used for home use and aren't feeding back to the grid. So there's no net metering, there's no volume that they can measure so that they would know how much what's going on. So what's happening is that they tend to over forecast the peak, we overbuy capacity. And then when we get that extra capacity, that means our demand charges are going up. Eversource just recently raised their demand charge about $1 kW. That probably doesn't mean much to you, but it was not an insignificant move. And the other thing about what's happening with peak, because it's shifting to a later hour, you're seeing the cost of the peak move towards residential customers and away from business customers who aren't consuming as much at that time of peak. I had a customer in Hartford who saw a 25% decline in their capacity requirement because that was tagged to them by the utility because the peak hour shifted later. So great for them, but someone's picking up that tab. And then intermittency. ISO New England has to maintain the system. When you have renewables, you have a somewhat less reliable system in that you don't know when they're going to be there and when they're not. Part of maintaining a reliable system means not only do you have enough capacity to meet the peak hour, but you have something in reserve in case something occurs. And if you have an intermittent system that becomes less reliable, that means you have to add more reserves. So that sort of covers the unintended cost section of all this. So we had great, we got all the solar that we wanted. We probably got to some of the goals that you guys had talked about earlier. But now we have the other side, which is the unintended costs. So what were we shooting for in the first place? And one of those things, those are the things that you had on your list. If you were a policymaker, you would have said, these are the benefits of solar. These are the things we're trying to optimize. You might have been surprised by what are the costs. So you could have optimized any of these criteria, right? And a lot of different outcomes. Reducing greenhouse gases, solar, check. Increase generation diversity, solar, check. Increase reliability, don't think so. Reduce dependence on fossil fuels, solar, check. Decrease power costs, no. We saw the subsidies that we're giving to solar. Our costs are higher because of it. And that's not good for the next one, which is economic development. If you want manufacturers and commercial customers to be in your state, you really need to have you have to compete with other states on all your costs, and whether it's labor or your utility costs. Increase fairness in cost allocation. I think where we have an issue with regarding what is the correct cost for somebody with a solar system in the market. Facilitate markets. Does an administrative price facilitate a market? Does it increase is that the free flow of the market that we want to see? And I don't think that's what's happening in the solar market. Increase jobs? Well, you might be able to check that one. And then prove income distribution, if that was your criteria. I don't think I can answer that one here. And there might be some other criteria, but you could have chosen as a policymaker any one of these criteria, optimize the heck out of it, and then you have to understand what the consequences are. So that's really the point here, which is it's great to have all these, great to have solar. It's great to do a lot of things in the market, whether it's a sales incentive, whether it's a quotas for your bank personnel. But you have to understand and play out kind of what the consequences are going to be. So that's my discussion. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah.
We've seen countries like Denmark have days where renewables have made up a huge portion, 80%. I think Germany had an 80% day about a year ago, where all their energy was coming from renewables. Could you see a much larger area like the United States, do you think, in the distant or near future, getting to a percentage like that if the incentives were in line?
If the incentives are in line, sure. But let's just say we've gotten to the point where, all our renewables are competitive. Then you still have a mix, right? Because there'd still be some natural gas systems that might be in place. And you might have some dependence on fossil fuels just because for an administrative goal of reliability. And so.
I think it might actually be useful, just because this was revolutionary to me when I learned it. If you could spend a few minutes talking about why you really, I don't want to say can't, but it'd be very difficult to have 100% renewables, how you need a constant base load. I don't know if you could talk about that at all, kind of why natural gas or nuclear, there might always need to be some base load.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to intermittency and not being able to store, right? So you could have wind at night, but you won't have solar at night. You could have tidal, but it's stronger or weaker, depends on the moon. So there's a lot of things that prevent the renewables from being the same sort of reliability that you can get with a natural gas plant or you get from a nuclear power plant. The nuclear power plants, when they go down, it's unusual, and it lasts typically for 3-4 months. But other than that, they run like a charm.
Tends to make the news when they go down.
They do. It's interesting to note that because natural gas is so cheap, that a lot of nuclear plants are starting to close to the point where the nuclear plants are necessary to meet the emissions goals of the states. So they're starting to put pressure on the states to actually subsidize them. The folks at Millstone were up at the legislature at the end of the last legislative session, starting to talk that talk. In New York State, they've already done it. They're already subsidizing nuclear plants. So. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Sorry about that. So I put it in the dinner brigade.
Oh, you are? Okay.
And then I have a microphone. And then did you have? Thanks for
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, guys, and come to the internship panel next Wednesday. We'll be podcast. Thank you.